Greetings everyone and welcome to the GvG Meta Report. We're just going to hop right in there and get started on topics. Unlike previous, we're not going to be showing cards. We're actually going to be talking about decks because the meta has started to stabilize enough to where we can actually say every class has a bona fide deck. Alright, so starting with the Cancer, we have Hunters. Yes, Hunters. They're so popular that they have their own song now. Anywho, so yeah, Hunters really did not have to change at all for GvG. They've included maybe Clockwork Gnome. That's about it. You know, really, they didn't adapt much. We have seen a couple people try out more control or mid-range variants, but these have not caught on in popularity because their consistency is not very good. However, the typical, I'm just going to run everything down your throat Hunter still apparently works. Thanks. We appreciate that, Blizzard. We really do. Alright, moving on to the next class. Paladin. Yet again, another Cancer class. Alright, so here's what ended up happening. Paladins were one of the crappiest classes. Yeah, sure, they could outlast anybody, and that's kind of how they won fatigue battles and things of that nature, and they would just overwhelm you with these big-ass minions. You had nothing you could throw against it. But most of the time, they got rushed down pretty hard by aggro decks. So now they actually have a mid-game, muster for battle to Quartermaster. This has created such a swing that we've seen aggro decks pulling this off. We've seen aggro Pally running muster for battles, and even, and I shit you not on this one, the Swamp Giant. Yeah, or Sea Giant, my bad. Sea Giant. So we've been seeing a lot of that, a lot of build up a big, huge board, throw these down, boom. We've seen a couple of them throwing in Hobgoblins for shits and giggles if they didn't get the nifty little thing of the Quartermaster. However, remember, it's only minions that are played, not summoned, so, but aggro Pally definitely made a showing, and your typical control Paladin is still pretty much the same deck with a few minor variations, and it's still kind of annoying to deal with. Alright, moving on to the next class here we have is Warlocks. Okay, Warlocks actually had the greatest amount of shift in their playstyles. Zoo actually changed almost entirely what it is, and I don't even really think you could call it Zoo now. Now it's more like, hey, Sea Giant, have a nice day. Implosion basically sets that deck up right off. It's a great removal tool for them, especially when you consider things like raid leaders actually become popular again. Direwolf Alphas, even the Stormwind Champion has made an appearance on the ladder. I wish I was kidding with this, but it's true. So they're definitely making a name for themselves, definitely showing up. Handlock, still strong, still beating the crap out of a lot of things, still very vulnerable to aggro, but because of anti-Keelbot, not as much as they used to be. Very strong for them. We've also seen Demon Lock decks popping up all over the meta, especially on the NA side. I've heard rumors and stuff from people in the EU that they've been seeing a lot more of them as well. And apparently that floating bobbing head guy is just wrecking a lot of shit. So keep your eyes up. Alright, next up is the Druid. Here's proof that you really didn't need GvG in order to still be good. Druids, they included one card, Dr. Boom. Some Druids have also gone and added piloted Shredders to their decks, replacing the good old staple of Chillwind Yeti, which actually does provide an interesting little bonus of the fact that, hey, I'm also going to have another minion even after you kill it. So we've been seeing that happen, but for the most part, Ramp Druid stayed almost identically the same, with the exception of a few changes. And Fast Druid stayed almost exactly the same, with a minor tweak, mostly a Noyatron. So, moving on. Mage. Mage probably had the greatest change of all the classes. Mech Mage, still strong, still a very nasty deck. It's very aggressive, but has enough punch in the mid game to where it can carry itself over. Many of these decks also run Antonidas, because all those little spare parts end up being fuel for him in the late game. Freeze Mage has also been making another return. Yeah, not even kidding. However, whether or not it's going to be viable is still a little too close to call, but it does have potential. All right. Next up we have is Priest. Yes, everybody's favorite child fondlers. Priest. Death Rattle. Still pretty much the damn same, with the exception of now they're using Village Chosen has been popping up. Light of the Naru has been popping up quite a bit to give them even more early game aggro potential. And it's really screwing over a lot of the control decks. And even other aggro decks. This actually really screws with hunters left and right. They don't know how to deal with it yet. For the more control variations, we're seeing a lot more Vol'jin popping up as people really are starting to grasp what he can actually do. And it's changing a lot of stuff. It really is, because now you're not having to use your mind control on this big threat minion. Instead, you're just Vol'jining it. And oh, look at that. It's not as impactful. You can trade off with it. Boom, bam. But you've got this big nasty creature now they have to deal with. They're not really too happy about that. So it's definitely getting a lot more play. But Death Rattle is still strong. Aggro Priest is actually still kind of making the rounds here or there. It's, you know, whispered about, rumored. Only a few crazy individuals such as myself actually do play this. But it's been known to actually take people by surprise and win quite a few games. So look out for that. Warrior. Okay, Warrior was probably the one class that got the greatest boost from GvG. So they already had a great tournament deck going into GvG. Now, because of Shield Maidens and because of Dr. Boom, they got even more. And some Warrior players have even started messing around with Crush and the blade that bounces all over the place to get some really interesting effects. However, they're kind of gimmickish to some degree, so don't expect them to be popular. Crush, on the other hand, may actually become a little bit more played as time goes on, because it's still another hard removal. All right, Warriors now have 4 hard removals they can put in their deck. 2 executes, 2 crushes. It's really nasty for them. Aggro builds that are basically OTK kind of things have been popping up here and there. However, most people already know how to deal with these. We've seen it a million times before. Thank you, Priest. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, insert class name here. So the only people that they're really taking advantage of are either those who are screwed in what they have in their hand, or those who basically don't know any better. So that's pretty much for them. Next up, we have Rogues. Initially, a lot of people thought that Rogue got shitted on left and right, and I myself still kind of feel they have. But they're battling it out. They're really fighting their way through it. Mech deck is actually kind of viable for them, mostly as a tempo-based deck. They just shred everything you have, start pushing damage on you, and when you finally recover from it, they unleash spells and just rape your face. It's quite nasty. Miracle is yet to make a reappearance, mostly because of the Gadgetzan Auctioneer nerf, but hey, it had a good run while it did. But who knows, somebody may come up with something. VO7tron maybe? Alright, moving on. Shaman! Okay, so Shaman was pretty much average going in. It was a great deck to open with in tournaments. Had great matchups against so many different classes. It was really hard for a lot of people to actually deal with it. They weren't excessively great, but they weren't excessively bad either. They were average. So with GvG, we saw Power Mace for the Shaman, and one of the first things that Shaman did is they went, mech. And then they looked at Arcane Nullifier and went, mech. And so Shamans have been getting some huge, huge value out of that. I've been playing that left and right. Mostly in mid-range decks, we have seen some burst decks popping up, you know, using Zap-O-Matic as well as Bloodlust and things of that nature. We've also been seeing a more traditional mid-range kind of controlish deck that runs both Alakir and Neptulon. basically Neptulon gives you the Murloc burst at the back end, which is kind of difficult for a lot of people to deal with. If you're dropping that many Murlocs at once, not the easiest of things to deal with. But again, this is RNG, and that can sometimes backfire in your face. But hey, either way, you still got a 7/7 on the board. So yeah, Shaman's still in a great position, still probably about the baseline average class that you could get, but you will eke out a lot of wins because it's so difficult for other classes to deal with you. Alright, now we get to move on to two legendaries that have been actually making quite an interesting impact on the meta this week. First up is Trogzor the Earthinator. I was kind of like, it's like a win more card, it's not all that great. But after playing with this guy several games, I come to discover that this guy acted in many ways like a better version of Loetheb. And here's why. So, Loetheb, yeah, trading a minion in to kill it or trading 2 minions, okay, that's cool. 6 is a little bit more difficult, obviously, than 5, but this doesn't stop your spellcasting, but it punishes you greatly for doing it. Alright, so a lot of times this guy will act as a taunt on his own, and they will trade almost their entire board to deal with him. And because it's at 7 mana, that means your next turn you could easily play a Ragnaros, and oh, look at that, you had a clear board. So, Trogzor the Earthinator, great value all around, just amazing. The arena value on this guy is like 9,000. In Constructed, though, a lot of people still view it as a win more card, but there are several players who are playing around with this. Most notable of these would be Druids. Druids have definitely been playing around with this. It acts as a really nifty way of screwing with certain things with other classes. So, yeah, you play this down against like a mage. Oh, guess what? All those spare parts you were planning on? Thank you. Yeah, you're gaining fuel, but you're giving me stuff that I could possibly finish you off with on my turn with a Savage Roar. So, Druids are loving this guy. He's amazing. Now, speaking of spare parts, Gazlo! Alright, I actually got this guy day 1. I think this was the second legendary I opened. I was just awestruck by him. He's actually first appeared a lot in mage decks because he was pretty consistent with all the spare part cards and, you know, arcane missiles and mirror images and things of that nature. So he actually worked pretty good in there, but he kind of fell out of favor. Players started realizing that, hey, if I'm using him with all these spare parts, then I'm not going to have anything for my Antonidas. So they had to make a choice, and Antonidas is going to win because Fireball is over minions all day long. But Gazlo has been making somewhat of an appearance, most notably back in Mage. And he's been doing some really sick things, pulling things from other classes to affect the mechs that are out there and just completely devastating a lot of stuff. I've been actually seeing this guy pull, like, Force Tank Max. Yeah. It was like, oh, by the way, here. So he's getting tremendous value, tremendous. He can even pull the Foe Reaper 9000, which I did once, and my opponent quit. So Gazlo definitely is going to be our star this week, just because he has so much potential. But because it's RNG, it will backfire. But still, it's an amazing card. All right. So that's going to wrap up this GvG Meta Report for week number 3. Tournaments are still going on. We're still seeing a lot of the adaptation type phase of our meta, which is they're taking stuff from the old meta, adapting with what we have now, and trying to see if they can find something better by doing it. Some classes have discovered, yes, you can. Other classes said, fuck no, we don't need it. See Hunter. And that's the way it's going to be for a bit. Now, eventually, some people are going to move on to other decks that they're going to find are going to be great counters to what's in the adaptive meta. This will actually start the birth of a new meta. But until that happens, we are still in the adaptive meta. So, until next time, this is Ashiv saying, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, and for all you out there, good luck and have a safe holiday season.